Ground Zero, Chapter 18, Rashmina, Son of a Donkey. Passoon, Rashmina called. She didn't understand. 1 minute, Passoon had been right in front of her, and the next, poof, he was gone. But how? The path they'd been following stretched slowly and steadily up the hill. You could see up to the next ridge, and all the way down into the ravine below, and there were no big rocks or trees for Passoon to hide behind. "Passoon, you son of a donkey!" Rashmina cried. "Where'd you go?" She spun, looking all around, but Passoon had completely disappeared. Rashmina started to panic. If she lost him, if he found the Taliban before she'd been able to talk him out of it, Rashmina started up the path. If Passoon had somehow made it up the long hill while she wasn't looking, she would see him from the top of the ridge. She ran halfway there, then stopped. No, there was no way Passoon could have sprinted all that way in a few seconds she hadn't been looking. It was too far. He has to be around here somewhere, Rashmina thought. But where? Rashmina came back down the path where she planted the seed and opened her senses. She scanned the terrain in minute detail, lingering over every rock, every bush. She listened for the slightest sounds on the wind, a snapping twig, a scuffling footstep, an accidental rockfall. Nothing. But then tink, Rashmina caught the smallest metallic sound, almost no louder than her heartbeat. She wouldn't have heard it if she hadn't been listening so hard. The sound had come from a steep wall of rocks along the path. She moved closer to the wall, listening, watching. But there's nothing here, she thought. She put her hands to the rock face, as though there was some kind of secret door Passoon had walked through. But no. Rashmina sighed and looked down at her feet. Wait, were those the faint marks of shoes in the dirt? She crouched down low. It was only when she put her head almost all the way to the ground that she saw beneath the rocky overhang the entrance to a cave. Passoon, that sneaky rat! The Afghan mountains were full of hidden caves like this. Some caves were no bigger than the snow leopards who liked to sleep in them, but others went deep into the mountain, carved out long ago by ancient waters and smoothed into hiding places by decades of jihad fighters. Passoon must have known the cave was there and waited until she wasn't looking to scramble inside. The entrance was just big enough for a grown person to squeeze through, and Rashmina wiggled inside. Beyond the entrance there was a room to sit up, and then stand, but it was pitch black and cold in the cave. She waited for her eyes to adjust, but it was too dark. There was only a sliver of light from the entrance to orient herself. "Passoon," Rashmina whispered. The little toad had to be in here somewhere. He could be standing right next to her for all she knew, but the cave might also go deep within the mountain. She was going to have to go further inside to find out. Rashmina put her hands out in front of her, feeling her way through the darkness. Almost immediately she ran into something about thigh level, and her heart caught in her throat. Wood scraped softly against rock, and there was a clink of glass. A small table, maybe, with something on it? She felt tentatively in the dark. Yes, a table, and in the middle of it, a lantern. She could tell from its shape, and if there was a lantern, there might be. She patted the tabletop until she found it, a small plastic lighter. Rashmina struck the flint on the lighter, and suddenly she could see her hands. She squinted into the glare. There was a glass lamp on the table like the one Rashmina's family had at home, and this lamp still had oil in it. Rashmina lit the wick, and a warm glow cast all around her. Something was stacked against the smooth walls of the cave just beyond the edge of her light, and Rashmina stepped closer with the lantern to see what it was. Weapons. The cave was filled with them. Rifles, RPGs, boxes of bullets, unburied landmines. The metallic sound Rashmina had heard outside must have been Passoon tripping over a weapon in the dark. Rashmina brought the lantern down for a closer look. The weapons were made by many different countries. She recognized some of the languages written on the weapons, and others she guessed at. English, Russian, French, German, Spanish, Korean, Chinese. No Pashto or Arabic, though. Afghanistan didn't make the weapons. They just bought them and shot them. It was the big countries that made money selling weapons to the little countries. Who they killed with those weapons wasn't any of the big countries' concerns. What would happen, Rashmina wondered, if the big countries stopped selling weapons to the little countries? How would Afghanistan and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and Iran and all the countries around them fight each other and the rest of the world? With bows and arrows, swords, rocks, fists? Maybe, Rashmina thought, they wouldn't fight at all. Maybe they would spend their time doing something else instead, like building factories and schools and hospitals. But that was never going to happen, and Rashmina knew it. She knew, too, as a chill ran down her back, that what she was looking at right now was the Taliban's weapons cache. A big one. Rashmina turned, and there was Passoon standing right next to her. He appeared out of nowhere, like a ghost. Rashmina screamed, and Passoon lunged for the lantern. Rashmina jumped, and the lantern clattered onto the floor. Krish! The glass lantern shattered, and foomp! The spilled oil ignited. "No, the explosive!" Rashmina cried. "Help me put out the fire!" Passoon yelled. Together they kicked dirt at it, and Rashmina used her headscarf to beat out the last of the flames. She was still scared that one of the weapons might go off, and now it was pitch dark in the cave again. "Get out! We have to get out!" Passoon told her. Passoon scrambled out first, then helped Rashmina through the hole. When she was back on her feet, she shoved her brother hard. "You idiot!" she cried. "You could have killed us both in there." "You're the one who dropped the lantern," he told her, "because you popped up like some evil spirit and scared me to death," Rashmina yelled. They were both shaking so much they had to sit down on the ground. When Rashmina could breathe again, she turned to her brother. "How did you even know that place was there?" Passoon looked away. "Darwesh and Armand showed it to me." Rashmina blew out a laugh. Narwesh and Arman, of course. Passoon got up angrily and stalked off up the path. Passoon, wait, Rashmina cried. She got to her feet and followed him again. I'm sorry. Please stop this foolishness and come home. Moore and Baba need you. I need you. But Passoon was done talking. Rashmina glared at her twin brother's back as he walked away. Why couldn't he see there was another path, another future? Why did he have to follow so doggedly in the footsteps of all the other boys who had left home for the Taliban before him? High up on the ridge, Rashmina spied a familiar rock with a phone number painted on it, the same one she and Passoon had passed a couple years ago, the spot she had guessed he was going to all along. The rifle's not going to be there, she told Passoon. It can't be. But it was. They passed the painted rock and came to the small plateau again, and there, right where Passoon had left it, was the same Soviet rifle he had used to shoot at the American Army base. Passoon picked up the rifle and checked to see if it's still loaded. Apparently it was. Passoon, what are you doing? Rashmina asked. Chick, chick. Passoon slid the bolt back in place and it took aim over the side of the mountain. I'm going to call the Taliban, he said. Chapter 19. Brandon. Get out. Brandon dialed the office number for Windows on the World from memory, his heart racing. The line buzzed with a busy signal. No, Brandon thought. No. Please tell me their phones are out. Maybe he dialed the number wrong. His hands were shaking as he hung up and dialed again. He just needed to know that his dad was alive, that he was okay. The phone was ringing. It was ringing. Someone was answering. Hello? This is Brandon Chavez, Brandon said, practically shouting into the phone. Is my dad there? Is he all right? There was silence on the line just for a moment, and Brandon held his breath. Leo, the person on the other line called. Your kid's on the phone. Brandon waited breathlessly for what felt like minutes, hours, and then, at last, Brandon? Dad! It was such a relief to hear his father's voice, to know after everything Brandon had been through today, after everything he'd seen, that his dad was still alive. Tears streamed from Brandon's eyes, but he laughed at the same time. Oh, Brandon, thank God you're okay, his dad was saying. There was a sudden crash and the smoke, and I couldn't find you anywhere. I didn't know if you were alive or dead. Brandon sobbed. I'm so sorry, Dad. I was going down to the mall to buy those Wolverine gloves for Cedric. I should have never left you. I was in an elevator when the plane hit, and I was trapped. I got out, and I tried to get back up to you, but I can't. There's a fire, and the stairs are blocked. I'm just so glad to know you're okay, his dad told him. I went down looking for you, but we can't get past the 100th floor. The 100th floor, Brandon frowned. If Brandon and Richard couldn't get up past the 93rd floor, and the people on top couldn't go down any further than the 100th floor, that meant there wasn't just one floor that the plane hit. It had taken out 7 whole floors. Were all those floors on fire like the 93rd was? How would the fire department ever be able to put something like that out? But that means all those people on the 100th floor up, Brandon said out loud as he realized it. That means they're all trapped. His breath caught, and he started to cry again. That means you're trapped. It's okay, Brandon. We're okay, his dad said. He sounded so calm, it calmed Brandon down too. A little. There's about 70 of us up here, his dad went on. There was a big event happening on the 106th floor, but we're all together now. It's really smoky, but we're going to be okay, all right? It was just an accident. This old building is tough. It can take whatever the world throws at it. Just like me and you, right? You're all right now. That's all that matters, Brandon. Madre de Dios. I thought I would never hear your voice again. Me too, Brandon said. He felt so helpless. He wanted to do something. Do you need us to call 911? Brandon asked, glancing at Richard. We've already called them, his dad said. They told us not to move, to wait for the firefighters. What floor are you on? Are they up to you yet? We're on the 89th floor. There's other people here, but no firefighters, not yet. Don't worry, Brandon, his dad said. We're going to be okay, both of us. Are you with somebody who can keep you safe? Yes, I'm with a man named Richard. He's nice. Brandon looked up at Richard again, and Richard smiled. He was on the escalator with us this morning. The one who almost spilled his coffee, remember? He works on the 89th floor. Okay, good. You can stay with him until you're safe. Brandon's mind went back to the inferno on the 93rd floor, the wreckage, the woman who burned. What if the firemen can't get up to you in time? Brandon asked. Then they'll take us off the roof by helicopter, his dad said. Yes, Brandon had seen the helicopter, and while there was nothing it could do for him, it could easily land on the roof and evacuate the people trapped on the floors above. It's all right, Brandon. We've been through worse, his dad told him. Brandon couldn't believe his dad was being so calm about everything, especially when Brandon felt so close to freaking out. He'd been able to put his feelings away through most of it, to push on when things were so horrible. He shouldn't have been able to think straight, but now that Brandon was still for a moment and finally talking with his dad, all his fear and worry and confusion came bubbling back up, and he could feel himself starting to panic. Brandon, are you still with me? His dad asked. Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, Brandon, it's all right. You still have your key, right? To the apartment? You can get yourself home on the subway. You've done it before. If they evacuate the building, I want you to take the subway home and wait for me there. Got it? I can't do this without you, Dad, Brandon said. He was crying again, and he turned away from Richard and the others, embarrassed. We're a team. You always... Outside through the window, Brandon suddenly spotted something glinting in the blue sky. It was an airplane, a jumbo jet. larger than life, and flying too low across the harbor, too close. Terror seized Brandon at the sight of something that should not be where it was. Esther saw it too, and she gasped. The plane was coming right for them in the North Tower. Another plane, getting bigger and bigger, too big, too close. Brandon took a frightened step back, and then the plane's wing dipped and it turned, disappearing behind the South Tower right in front of them, and there was a dull boom. And suddenly, a bright orange fireball erupted from the side of the South Tower facing them. Everyone in the office ducked, and Brandon cried out in shock and terror. The North Tower shuddered again, and Richard cursed. Through the phone, Brandon could hear the people screaming in windows on the world. He put the receiver back to his ear, his hand shaking. "Dad? Dad? Are you all right?" Brandon cried. "Yes, something just happened to the South Tower, but we don't know what. I didn't see it." "It was a plane," Brandon said, with growing horror. He didn't understand what he'd just seen. Planes didn't fly into buildings, but he'd just watched one fly straight into the World Trade Center. "Dad, a plane just hit the South Tower." There were more screams to the phone as people began to understand what was happening. Richard stood back up and put a trembling hand over his mouth. "Dear God in heaven," he whispered. Brandon, are you there?" his father asked. "Yes," Brandon said. He was still trying to process what he'd seen, but he just couldn't make his brain accept it. For one plane to hit the World Trade Center, that was a terrible accident. But for a second one to hit the South Tower? "Brandon, you have to get out of the building right now," his father told him. The calm in his dad's voice was gone, replaced by a breathless, electric fear. "As fast as you can, do you understand? Do not wait for the fire department. Get out." "What?" Brandon said, confused. Nothing made sense. What was happening? What was going on? "Brandon, listen to me. You have to get out of the building now." "I don't understand," Brandon said. He held the phone with both hands. "Dad, I don't." "Brandon, hang up and get out of the building as fast as you can," his father told him. "This wasn't an accident. We're under attack." Chapter 20. Rashmina, gone. Rashmina ran to look over the edge of the mountain where Passoon had aimed his rifle, and she pulled back in surprise. The American camp that one Passoon had shot at years ago was abandoned now. The Taliban had torn down the tin roofs and painted insults on the rock barriers, but nobody was there. The Americans had packed up and left. The ANA still had bases in the Providence, but not the Americans, not anymore. "Ha," Rashmina said. "Look, all that shooting, all that fighting, and for what? Neither side won anything, and neither side lost anything, except lives. We won," Passoon told her. "We drove them out." "Out of what? Why? Nobody lives here," Rashmina said. "We're in the middle of nowhere. There's no water, no food, nothing for animals to graze on. Nobody really wants this place. Not the Americans, and not the Taliban either. It's like it's all some big game." Passoon aimed the rifle at the old camp and pulled the trigger. Rashmina put her hands over her ears. "Passoon, what are you?" Passoon fired again. What was he doing? There was nobody down there. The old Soviet rifle echoed down through the valley. Suddenly, Rashmina understood. "I'm going to call the Taliban," Passoon had said, which was silly because neither of them had a phone. But if Passoon couldn't call the Taliban on the phone, he could call them with the rifle. He'd make them come to see who was shooting. Rashmina grabbed the rifle and tried to pull it from Passoon's hands. "Passoon, don't," Rashmina pleaded. "You don't know what you're doing." "I do too," Passoon said as they tussled. "I'm doing what you and Baba should have done in the first place. I'm going to tell the Taliban there's an American soldier in our house." Passoon was too strong for her. He wasn't going to give up the gun. Rashmina tucked a foot around his leg and tripped him, and they fell to the ground with a thud. The rifle slipped from Passoon's fingers, and they fought for it, kicking and shoving and wrestling each other, and not in the playful way they had that morning. This was desperate. Vicious. Rashmina felt like she was fighting for her life. Passoon pushed her away with his foot and got enough separation from her to stand. He held the gun to one side, barrel pointed at the ground, and panted to catch his breath. His eyes were wide and wild, and his chest heaved. "You're so stupid, Passoon," Rashmina told him. She pulled herself to her feet. "You're like a worm who crawls into a snake's nest and says, 'Hey, what are we snakes going to do today?' You're just a little baby playing at being a grown-up." Passoon hit her hard on the side of her face with his open palm. The blow was so sudden, so brutal, it sent Rashmina to her hands and knees. Rocks cut into her palms, but she didn't move. Rashmina tasted blood where she'd bitten her own tongue, and her face burned from the sting of Passoon's hand. But what had made her cry was the awful, shocking savagery of it. Rashmina and her twin brother had played rough since they were babies, pushing and poking and yanking at each other whenever they squabbled. But Passoon had never hit her. Not like this. Not with such venom. The worm was a snake after all. Rashmina dragged her sleeve across her eyes, but stayed on her hands and knees. "Passoon," she began, but her brother cut her off. "I may be your twin brother, Rashmina, but this is still Afghanistan. I am still a man, and you're still a woman, and you can't speak to me like that." Rashmina kept her eyes on the ground. "Passoon, you know what the Taliban does to anyone who helps the Americans. If you tell them we're hiding an American soldier in our house, they will kill us all when they come for him. Everyone you love will die. Anna, Moore, Baba, Marzia, and Zahir. Me." Passoon's voice wavered as he answered. "Baba made his decision. He was the one who sided with the infidels. They will kill everyone in this village just to teach us a lesson, Passoon. We've seen them do it. The Taliban will kill us all. You'll kill us all." Rashmina heard Passoon sniff like he was crying, but she still didn't look up. Wouldn't. So be it, Passoon told her. Whatever happens to our family, it's Baba's fault. And yours, he added. Passoon slid the bolt back and forth on the rifle and fired again, into the air. Rashmina shrank from the noise. He did it again. Rashmina kept her head down and her eyes closed, waiting for another shot. When nothing came, she looked up again. 3 Taliban fighters were coming along the path toward them. Passoon, she pleaded. Passoon, I still have your toy, she said, digging it out of her tunic to show him. Keep it, Passoon told her. Toys are for babies. I'm a man now. Rashmina got to her feet. She saw now there was no stopping Passoon from telling the Taliban about Taz, and as soon as he did it, the Taliban would come to their village. They would kill Taz, and they would kill the rest of them for giving him refuge. The only thing she could do was get back to her village first. She had to warn her family and everyone else. Rashmina turned and ran down the steep hillside, tumbling and falling and hitting every rock and bush along the way. She slid to a stop in a narrow ravine, but still could see the Taliban up above. They were almost to her brother. Rashmina wrapped her scarf around her head and stumbled away, sobbing. All she wanted to do was sit down and cry, but she had to hurry. She hurt all over from her rough descent, and her face still burned where Passoon had struck her. But it was the loss of her brother that hurt worse than anything. Everything they had ever had, everything they had shared as twins, as close as 2 people could perhaps ever be in this world, was gone forever. Rashmina glanced over her shoulder one last time. Passoon was talking animatedly with the Taliban and pointing back in the direction of their village. Rashmina ran faster.